So there's a wonderful saying that hurt people hurt people. And in my last marriage, my ex-wife had previously been married to a woman, and these two women had a child together. And there were challenges between the two parents, two human beings. And I'm so wary these days to even mention things like sexuality, because the ego loves to come in and be woke or anti-woke and attack each other over gender, and it's just ego stuff. There's no real love in it, because if you're looking at a human being, you're seeing them as a reflection of you. The Mayans have this wonderful saying, in la kacha. It's a bit like namaste in the Sanskrit language, but it means I see the divine in myself by looking at it in you. That's what in la kacha from the Lacandones tribe of Mayan Mexico means. So there were two lesbian women. My ex-wife was previously lesbian, and we got married, and I had a stepson, their child, a lovely young man. When I met him, he was 12. And there were these issues between the couple, and there's issues between all people, because you're looking at your stuff, right? And the further you go along the path of clearing the mirror of the implied journey of cleaning the mirror, which is recognizing that projection of a set of ideas about what reality is makes perception, right? So my belief system informs what I see. And if I see Krishna or Christ or goodness or the healed mind in all people, then that reflects back my direct perception. The Yoga Sutras calls it direct perception, because perception is not, it's limited to the faculties of the senses and the cognitive mind. But there's something that goes beyond that. Once, like in yoga, they say once you can see, like you glance quickly and you see a piece of wood and you think it's a snake. You see a stick and you think it's a snake. That's indirect perception. That's incorrect perception, misperception. And then once your mind starts to say, well, it's a snake, then you begin to see. But then when you see what the Course in Miracles says, which is my holiness blesses everything I see. God is in my mind. Like what is God in that sense? It's a realm that bridges direct perception and takes you into the realm of knowledge, where there's no good and bad. There's just divinity. So when you're looking at others and you've got all these judgments, and that's not meaning to say that you give up preferences. I mean, if you like ice cream and your partner doesn't, don't eat ice cream. like free will gives you that capacity. But anyway, there were issues between the ex-wife and my then wife, and then there were challenges between my wife and I, and then there was the added complication of the son and his needs and his preferences and his judgments. And it was like a washing machine of all these problems and challenges and possibilities and love. It was a mixture. And I was wise enough not to be blind to the fact that projection makes perception, which is a teaching in the Course in Miracles. So I remember this moment where, hurt people, where I stuck around for trying to save the relationship with my wife. She developed manic bipolar, and it really spiraled out of control. And I don't mean to say this, it's just a story, like, please don't pick on her or me for saying the story. But the point of the story is that, we're all handling a lot. Like the yoga studio I used to study at in India, it only had like a couple of things. It was a big school, but it only had a couple of things on the wall, and that really made them stand out. And one of them was down the stairs to the main hall. It said someone had written, we're all on a very difficult journey here, and it requires a lot of love, and everyone deserves your gentleness. And so I had this awareness that this ex-wife, in my story, in this situation, my ex-wife's ex-wife, I had projected all this hate onto her because I felt like she was trying to sabotage the relationship between my wife and I, and my relationship with my stepson. And I don't want to dwell on this because it's the private lives of others, but I'm using that instance to clarify hurt people, right? And I had the development in my mind to say, well, I need to go somewhere away from this story, because there's no way I can fix it at this point, in the sense of like fixing the relationship, although I hoped it could be fixed, and I was trying to see my way into that. But I realized that for my own sanity and healing, I had to process these very hard, tough feelings. And when you're not so mature in your relationship, and I don't consider myself supremely mature, especially the last few months, I've really looked at how my hurt feelings have dominated my mind after some experiences I had last year at a British university. What I did was I went from Northern California to Southern California. Well, first I went to Yosemite and I processed a depression, which took about 6 months in the face of all these challenges. And then for about a year, there was this projection onto this other woman, my ex-wife's ex-wife, of just hatred, right? And one morning I woke up, and this wasn't an intellectual thing because it was horrible. I mean, it was like a year of just like, I'm a victim of the world I see. I hate these people for what they've, she went down the aisle with me, committed to a relationship. So all the projections of my unhealed mind were put onto these people. And this is what you find often in psychotherapy. You see people, this process called transference, people project their ideal love or their ideal hate onto others. And it's just from the Course's point of view, the effects of the ego mind, the Course in Miracles point of view. And the way to heal it is to step back, which takes enormous poise inside and maturity, and say, this is my projection. This is the projection of the fearful thought system of the ego that I subscribe to, and I have to unsubscribe. And then this morning I woke up, I can't remember when it was, but it was a couple of years ago, and it wasn't an intellectual realization, it was more of a and that long sigh out, basically what it was saying was, I've projected this prison of hate that I'm in onto this person as a scapegoat. I own that. She might have done some harsh things without doubt, but that was a cry for love, and my response was a cry for love. It wasn't an extension of love. It was like, but it was moving in that direction because I just got away, and I said, this is an inner problem in me, and I don't have to have a relationship with this person, but I have to have a relationship with my projection onto her. And the only relationship that makes any sense is the death of the ego projection. And I think the appropriate word is resurrection, this bringing up again of what I have a problem with any word that begins with re, because it means do it again, right? And the idea is, from the Course in Miracles point of view, that you've fallen into a vat of tar and you're trapped there. You just fell once. You didn't fall again. You fell once. But you repeat the mistake of believing that you're still in the trap of the tar every time you make a judgment. And the judgment is an attack thought. It grades people whether they're better or worse than others. And in the world of choosing an engine for your car, or figuring out which food to eat for your best health balance. Those judgments make sense, you know. But in the world of like value judgments over who's worthy of love, they don't make any sense ultimately, and they just bind you. So this religion, reconnect, resurrection. I think it's just surrection. Like you wake up from the one mistake that's been repeated a million times, that I'm, you know, metaphysically, I'm going to attack those outside me. I'm going to judge them and demean them and see them as bodies that are capable of attack thoughts. And at the relative level, they're very much capable of attack and defense thoughts. That's the history of the world. It's one war after another. It's one conflict after another. It's one ego against another. And the only way to end that story is to recognize that hurt people. And the healing of hurt means the journey into the seat of the projection that is malicious, depressed, dark, rooted in the idea of death and murder and attack, and recognize it's a thought system that enslaves you. And I think that's one of the hardest things about Buddhism, because Buddha says, you know, if you've got all this anger and you're carrying it around, how do you put it down? And as far as I can tell, for most of us, there's a long process whereby we're going through a set of rooms where there's translators inside, and they're in our mind. You know, in the Bible it says, in my Father's house there are many rooms, and the translator's saying, this pain that you're feeling, it's your ego thought system. If you can put it down and interpret it differently, then you can move on to the next room, and a slice of the onion where there's tears and pain and depression and upset and condemnation and further reinforcement of separation drops away a little bit. So there was a movement where with my first wife I tried to persuade her to be with me and to fix it, and with my second wife I stuck around. I did stay around and try and be there for her, but I realized the ship was sinking with all these complex stories there. And so I knew enough about the nature of perception to just say, this isn't about her, this isn't about the people around her, although they've triggered me to see this in a certain way, and I have to go into the room of the translation of what they call in Sanskrit discrimination, or in the Course in Miracles, the Holy Spirit. And I give up this offering of my suffering state, my anger and my depression and the thought system that thrives on that. And I say, look, I'm helpless here. Please, can you, and this is the decision maker in the mind. It's like you bring it to the altar of the decision maker and you say, look, I'm in a lot of psychological pain. And I always felt the story of like John Lennon, where he said, if you meet an addict, right, and you say, oh, well, you shouldn't smoke, and that's probably the worst thing you can do, but maybe if they've got no way of doing anything but smoking, you sit down and you don't have to smoke with them, but you let them smoke and you don't judge them. And then they're suddenly in a space where they can like be with the problem, but the problem isn't unsurmountable because you're like still loving them and they've got the problem. And then you start to say, well, you know, you want to stop smoking? Like, maybe they say yes, maybe they say no, but you don't come in and chastise them for what they're doing. And there's that sort of implied hidden acceptance where you're like, when you're ready, you'll start to do things which are more supportive for your, you know, more holistic health. And so that morning that I woke up, you know, it was such a, I've been carrying this weight of this, you know, Buddha says, you know, someone that has anger, it's like they're carrying a ball of fire. And I had no choice. The momentum of this projection was so strong, and they come up, right? And people trigger you throughout your life, and you get a little better each time. And you can get very weary and tired. And I remember saying to a friend around this time, because I'd been through so much, tiring of life, which sounds suicidal, right? But it was a very honest statement, because it was like the ego thought system was just crushing me, and that statement encapsulated it. And he's a very wise man, and he just said to me, tire of being tired. Tire of being tired. And I sat with that for a long time in terms of the gestation of the meaning. And you do have to tire of being tired. You have to tell, oh God, he said this. Oh God, she did that. Oh God, he's attacking me on this. Oh God, he's, whatever your grievance is, it's not tired of being tired. It's you're tired of life, right? And it's got nothing to do with life. It's you're tired of being trapped in the ego thought system, which is a perfectly sane thing to tire of. So then you tire of that. And I woke up and it was like, I'm free of that hatred. She's free of my projection onto her. All minds are joined. Love holds no grievances. I was like, oh, thank God I've dropped that. And then I went on the university course and boom, new trigger, right? Someone was like, oh, you're a misogynist because you're telling the story of this painful experience you had. And I'm like, you're not listening. And so then again I got triggered. I got pulled in, and the Course in Miracles is saying, peace is my natural state. Ramana Maharshi is saying, happiness is the natural state of my being. You think the shadows on the screen are what's true, and they're just the effects of an illusionary thought system. So you can turn those shadows on the screen into a happy dream when you plunge your logic into the soils of your essential nature, which never changes. And I think people get so caught up in the hurt and the pleasure of the world that, it's like they're two sides of the same coin. I'm not saying to deny pleasure. It's like, you can't. Like, why would you do that? But there comes a point where you start to realize your purpose here really is related to transcendence of an illusion. And then when you get better at saying, okay, there's a bunch of attack thoughts coming at me, all you see after a period of time, and I don't claim to have mastered this, but all you see is this cry for help, and behind that this infinitely loving reality. And it's like people have dirty bandages on and are so caught up in retaliation and attacks and status and insecurity just it's everywhere, until you come to the point of saying, well, what is certainty? What is security within my perceptive apparatus? And how does that reflect in how I, like the charity I extend in how I see others? And then I think with the Course in Miracles or Ramana Maharshi, someone in one of the books by Sadhu Om, he just talks about like when you hit a punch, right? And he said you can push to go, like if you're digging a swimming pool or something with a shovel, it's a long process to do that, like eating an elephant or something. You punch, you put in a big amount of effort, or intensity or interest, and then the mind is just like, give me a break, and then you drop it for a while and you come back, and then your vigor's back and you punch again. And this projection makes perception is a very challenging journey, because you're constantly looking at these projections of lack of love in yourself, right? Because that's the only one in the room you're not trying to fix other people. I mean, it may be that your example speaks to other people and helps them along the way, but that's not your job, and it's not an egocentrical process to transcend this malicious projection inside you. It's a very sane process, and it's going on or not going on, like you're stalled all the time, but it's there, and you're moving forward the goalpost to the extent that you're able and willing. And nothing that happens in the story of your life is separate from that process. And it's amazing because the ego wants to cloak you in depression in the sense that you're failing, or it's a hopeless task. The more you are able to go through these plateaus, like that one moment in the garden after 9 months of just, I hate this world, I hate these people, why are they so mean? But at the back of my mind, I'm like, almost like a father with a child, you know, I'm like, well, he'll get over it. And I knew I would. I mean, and someone said to me the other day, I was talking about a friend that had died, and he was a serious student of the Course in Miracles. And I said, well, he did a great service to mankind when he was part of the people that took Ken Wapnick to court to publish this book. Because it wasn't like the Course in Miracles was trapped under a copyright, and it was trying to be the Course in Miracles Foundation was trying to control it, and thank God it wasn't controlled, because then everyone could access it. But I said he did a great service, and this person I was talking to, a friend of mine that was friends with him, she said, well, most of his life he didn't do very much. And the Course in Miracles says you need do nothing. And we're called human beings, we're not called human doings. And I think that there is this sort of weariness with meaningless activity. I'm not saying don't have a job, but the pettiness of the mind that is trapped in, and it's a practical thing that we all have, but it trapped in measuring people's value by their achievements, right? And that's, if you're a farmer, you need to make enough food. There's a sort of biological reason why we have that in our nature. But at a deeper level, from the teachings of the perspectives that come with the Course in Miracles and Ramana Maharshi, your job is to wake up from the dream, right? That's your only job. And if you've got a good education, there's going to be a big part of you that's going to rebel against that and be very threatened by that, because we've got these tiger moms in America, and it's like, you've got to play the piano, you've got to do a million things, and I'm not judging any of those people. But the anxiety and the neurosis and the stress and the projection of judgment that comes with not being someone really important in the world is a strategy of the ego to keep you on your toes, to keep you running from the process, which is the most important process of your existence, which is to take away the blocks to the truth of your true nature.